I don't walk away from commitments, right? But that doesn't mean that there weren't moments where I'm like, you know, like I wasn't with my children.
Yeah.
You know, there were whole swatches of time. You know, my oldest, you know, he's like, he jokes now. He's like, Mama, do you remember my childhood?
No.
He's like, yeah, I remember like sitting at the window seat and looking at the window, seeing when mom would come home. And I'm like, and that's real.
I don't got it all planned out, but you know, I just watch it all pan out, 'cause I know that you know, covered in this life until forever.
You know what? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank
Shilpa,
you.
welcome to the Cool Mom Code podcast.
I feel like I've arrived now
This
that
is-
I'm here.
Look, I
Yeah.
mean, look, you've made it. So happy we could finally announce to the world
I'm
you've
officially
made
a
it.
cool mom.
You're officially a cool mom. You are part of the Cool Mom crew. No, seriously though, we have been trying to make this happen for a while.
For a long time, yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't know, I am very fond of you.
Likewise.
I really am. And from the moment I've met you, I just felt like you have such a light. And so I'm so excited to get into this conversation because you and I have had many conversations before.
What I love about us is we don't beat around the bush.
No.
Like we get into it right away.
We really do.
You're like, how are you? And I'm like, well, let me
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
you.
exactly. We're like, hey, haven't seen you in a couple
Yeah.
months. Let's get it out. And this is literally at dinner with 15 other
Yes,
people.
on the side,
On the
where I'm like
side.
leaning next to your
We're
chair.
like,
Yeah.
okay, let's do it.
Right.
All right, but now we get to do it and like talk about
officially.
it for everybody. And I think that you have so much to share that is so relatable, to be honest with you, and a lot that I think people are going to be surprised about. Because there's some things about you that I feel like people don't really realize. They see you.
Yes.
You are the co-founder of Cuyana. You really are, and you've built this incredible brand
Yeah.
that is female focused, and not only female focused, but you stand behind it with having like an 82% women, right? I mean, right?
Yes.
You employ
Yes,
about 82%
correct.
of your
Uh-huh.
employee, right?
And
are
to have
women.
a founder like with Carla and I, two women of
Yes.
color.
But let's talk about it because you started your business in
Yeah.
Oakland.
Yep.
And you started this business when you had already had your first child, right? Weren't you pregnant with your second?
I had my second already.
You already had your second.
It was crazy. I had a 3.5-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Starting a business.
Starting a business and a semester of school. So I had my second during my MBA.
Wow.
Right after my second semester, leading into my third. Had a C-section, went back to school 2 weeks later.
Okay, so wait a minute. Hold on. Let me just paint this scenario for everyone because I think as mothers we can relate to
Yeah.
certain things, right? So you get married.
I get married.
You're working.
I wasn't just working. I was like pretty much the main provider because my husband was in residency.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you have your full-time position and your career, and you decide, wait a minute, I want to start my own business.
I, before that, decided, because I had kind of put off graduate school for my husband to get his finished residency, right? Like our income was super important, and I didn't want to put off children.
Right.
And so I had my first.
Had you guys made that commitment to each other?
Yes.
That you weren't going to put off family because
Yep.
of career?
Yeah. That we were not that we were gonna put off, and we were gonna do it all.
Right.
We were gonna do this too and figure it out.
I say that because Issa
Yeah.
and I made the same commitment.
Yep.
In the beginning, we were like, nope.
We're gonna
nope,
do it all.
We're going to do it all.
Yeah,
We're not
and
going to let anything stop us.
We made a commitment, Lizzie, early, right after we got married, and I'll never forget this moment. I talk about it as one of the most impactful of my life, is that we got home from the honeymoon, and as growing up as a traditional Indian woman, you know, I was taught like marriage is compromise, like I'm supposed to now like put my own dreams on hold, and I married the right man, and I knew that. But when we got back from our honeymoon, he looked at me and he said, now that all that BS is over, how do we support each other to be the best individuals we could be?
Wow.
And so we started our marriage like that. Like he was like, I'm in your corner to support you to be the best human you could be. And that's not the best, like, and as a result, we'll be the best couple, right? So I already knew that, like, okay, it was my turn to kind of support us, but then eventually it would be, you know, like it would be my turn to go to school or do whatever I wanted.
Right.
You know, obviously as the mom, and we'll talk a lot about that, that doesn't mean you get to do it 100%.
You
You still are on call for that child.
Yes.
It's different.
It is different.
But the fact that I didn't have to deal with that extra layer of like, oh, why are you doing that?
Do you feel like that came from just like his upbringing and your upbringing? Like, because traditionally, like you said, that's not the case, right?
I think it was because we didn't want to be the norm. Like, I think it's, so I think as a
You married an
reaction to
outlier.
our upbringing, right?
Yeah. You both were outliers.
Yes. And we knew that already. And we're like, we're not going to do what everybody else is doing. Like,
Is
we're
that
not,
just also the modern way? Do you think that it's also just like
Yeah.
the modern way of you guys kind of interpreting what your life would now look like?
I think it's the evolved way. Like, but I don't think every couple and not everything doesn't have to be like that for everyone.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to judge other people's decisions.
Oh, no,
either.
by no way.
And I think there's a lot of clarity actually when the roles are very defined. I think it's a lot messier living the way we live.
Yeah,
Right?
I can agree.
Yeah. So like, I think it's actually very clarifying when one person's supposed to stay home and the other person is working. That's just never going to work for me.
Right.
So I think that could be more modern, right?
Yeah.
That we're multifaceted. We want to celebrate every part of our individuality.
Oh, I love that, though.
But yeah, so we started off on that kind of trend, and then, you know, so when he was finishing fellowship, we lived in Baltimore at the time.
Oh,
I was living in
yeah.
Baltimore for a year for his fellowship.
Okay.
Working full time. And I was also responsible for our child.
So not only were you working full time, because he wasn't available, he was
He
in
wasn't available at all.
residency
I barely saw him. He
And
was
so-
a surgical fellow.
Wow.
Yeah, in Baltimore. So we didn't have any support system. We had just one dear friend who lived there. That's it. So I would wake up with Amani, my oldest, and then the nanny would start at 9. Then I would start working, and then I would had to finish by 5, and then I would put him to bed. I didn't have any support.
Yeah.
And then I would go back online and work. And then I added in, I wanted to get my MBA. So then I would study for the GMAT after I would finish working,
Wow.
like on repeat every single day.
And you just felt like the timing, that wasn't a concern for you. Like timing, you know, a lot of times when you say, okay, you have ambitions, you have dreams,
Yeah.
so it's all about when's the right time to
Yeah.
do it. For you, you were like, oh, okay, just a young child under the age of 3.
He was between 1 to 2 that year.
And husband fully
Committed
to something else, to his, you know, residency.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, great. Now's the time for me to go do my MBA.
Because I was already 32, right? I was going to be 32 by the time I would apply. And like, that was, I mean, for women, that was already, I think, 7 years past the average age of what women go to get their MBA.
Wow.
Yeah, they're 25, 26. I was already going to be on the old side,
Wow.
right? Entering with a child.
Do you feel like motherhood pushed you into moving towards your dreams faster?
1,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
I had this moment when I was pregnant with my first, that was like, I felt so happy with where I was in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, all my insecurities, and it happened to be when I was 30. So I'm like, all my insecurities of my 20s, like, I'm going to put that aside. I like where I am. I like who I am. Now let's go see what I'm capable of. So it was the opposite of what, it wasn't like, let me be, so I had maternal instinct for sure, but it was
Yeah.
like, it was so clarifying that my life is going to be work and this family. So let's go see, all the rest of it was like kind of on the side. It didn't matter anymore. So I actually started pushing myself at age 30.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the next left. And then I just didn't stop. In my 30s was like that decade of just trying to do everything. I kept on layering on more stuff to see what else, like, what could I really accomplish if I put my entire self into something?
Have you met your capacity yet?
Yes. Yes. I did in the last, it was actually after, and I don't know, I do think I plan my life in decades, and my 40s has been different. It's been harder.
You plan your life in decades. What's that mean?
I think if we plan in shorter stints, we are not accomplishing stuff.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Hold up. Because I like to take the moment
Yeah.
and understand. Okay, so if you say if we plan in shorter stints, we're not accomplishing stuff. So if you plan in decades, longer periods of time, you feel like you're giving yourself the time to accomplish bigger things.
Yes. So like if you, and I go on record a lot saying how I think balance is bullshit.
I do too.
And I think it goes hand in hand because balance and the way that we propagate work-life balance, especially for women, and I think we actually do this as a disservice to women by saying you can even achieve balance, which doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
And so we're always setting ourselves up for failure. Like, am I supposed to, am I supposed to work out, spend time with my children, be an executive, sleep with my husband, make dinner, right? Do all of those things in a 24-hour span, in a weekly span? Like, how is that possible?
So how do you prioritize what you do and what you don't do?
So if you're doing it over a decade, you have a values-based conversation.
Yeah, but okay, but now we're talking specifics over a decade. You're talking, how do I be an executive, sleep with my husband, make sure that my kids are taken care of and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But now, like, those feel like daily things, right? In a 24-hour period, or weekly things.
But they may not always happen on a week. So for me, if I think about it in a decade, and I'm like, these are the things I want to accomplish over a decade, which is I want to see, I mean, for me at 30, I was going to start a family. I was going to get a master's degree.
Right.
And then I was going to get a job that really fulfilled me. Right. So that's all I knew. So it wasn't like big things.
Right. Those are
I
pretty
mean, sorry,
big things.
but like
Those
they're
are
big
huge things.
but they're not so detailed
Minute.
and specific.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm gonna go push myself to my boundaries in these 3 areas. And then everything else, so like the working out was compromised, right? Like and you and I have talked about this off like the record, and we can talk about it on the record today, but my marriage was compromised. It wasn't one of those 3.
Yeah.
And so I had to like
refocus.
Okay, like family meant not just kids, it also meant marriage, and the marriage is the hardest part of having children.
I mean, the marriage is the hardest part of it all.
Right.
And I've gone on record saying this a lot, is that as much as I love my husband, I feel like having the relationship between a man or relationship between a marriage, right? Whatever it is, the relationship between a marriage is always harder to factor in than it is for my children. My children feel second nature for me. It's natural.
Right.
I'm going to nurture them. I'm going to be there. I'm going to make decisions. With my husband, it always feels like you have to force yourself to think about it constantly. And if when you don't, is when you start to see the cracks evade and you start to see the issues and problems and communication.
And everything else cracks because you can't focus on everything else. So it is our foundation, and we don't take care of it.
It's true. When did you start to notice that your marriage, right? Like your marriage is what was lacking?
So it was interesting so when I was working the full-time job, taking care of Amani, who was like 18 months old, studying for
Amani's
my GMAT.
Your oldest?
My oldest. Studying for my GMAT, and my husband was working all the time. There was like a real equity in the house, which is interesting because it doesn't feel equitable. But it was like we're all doing this because his career is going to take care of our family. This is the family together deciding that this is important for ourselves, right? And then when I went to business school, I was very entitled, right? I was like, I went through all of that. So I didn't realize how many things I was racking up in the back. Like I compromised here, here, and here.
Because he was done with his residency.
He was done with his residency
when you
and
started
fellowship.
Your MBA.
And so we moved back to Oakland, and now I had a 2-year-old, and I was going to business school. And like business school is like, yes, I had to work my ass off. I didn't take any of those finance classes. I studied my ass off, took care of Amani too, but I also wanted to go out.
You felt like it was your turn.
I felt like it was my turn. And when he didn't say it was his turn in fellowship, it was all of us doing it together. Right. And so when I started becoming entitled, like, this is my turn, you're supposed to support me, you're supposed to compromise here and here. He's like, what, WTF? Like, what is this? Like, this doesn't feel like a joint, like, thing at all. And so I had to, through therapy, I realized how I had to put that down. Like, that it had to be a joint thing.
Right.
And so I ended up choosing to have my second child because I didn't want a big age difference between the two. And so I started thinking, okay, back to the family again. Like, what is more important, that I get a year of partying?
Okay.
And then my kids are 4 years apart.
Right.
Or do I try to have another child now, and make that a priority?
Because
which means
you're
I'll
thinking of
compromise.
the 10-year goal.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And so when I started thinking that way again is when we got into realignment. And then I was able to do the things I wanted to do. It's not like I didn't milk the life out of business school. I did.
Was he up for therapy like you were?
He definitely, yes.
Yeah.
I again married the right man.
Yeah.
And he's always willing to work on himself. Like
Sometimes I feel like people in couples, right? And this is what I find when I talk to people.
Yeah.
Couples are either the type, if therapy is involved, couples are either the type where they do it beforehand
Yep.
to help make sure that everything keeps running smoothly,
Yep.
or they do it when the cracks start to happen because they're like, yo, we need someone that, like, we need to talk this out and like
Right.
figure out what the issues are here.
Yep.
You guys were the ones that did it when like the cracks. So do you feel like you had to keep going through therapy just to kind of like keep it smooth, or did you feel like
Yeah.
you kind of figured it out and you moved on?
Yeah, no, we kept on until we felt like we built the foundation back again. But then the interesting thing is that, you know, just to kind of fast forward on that question a little, and I know we'll get back to like the Cuyana founding. When I started Cuyana, had then a 6-month-old, a 3.5-year-old, a semester of school, a marriage, right? Like a full-time business, like a full-time wife, business
Yes.
partner, and Carla. Like, how was I going to manage all of that?
Right.
And that's when we really had to do a lot more therapy because I like threw in a whole nother aspect of it. But I needed help.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we actually were able to stop therapy once we got a really good nanny.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Once you put in the places, the pieces in the place, right, that
Right.
helped you to get what you guys needed to do.
Yeah.
Did he ever talk to you and say, "Hey, listen, Shilpa,
Yeah.
can you knock some things off your plate?" Was that ever in question?
I think this is where like his modern manness wouldn't allow him to say it. But did he feel it? Yes, 100%. Did he want to say it? Yes. Did he say it? No. But I knew it was there.
Yeah.
Like, I think he was just like, are we done with this yet?
Yeah.
And it took a long time. I think, you know, probably it took a year into business school for him to support business school. It took a few years into Cuyana, like 3 or 4 years. When his needs were met,
Yeah.
then he was able to look at what I was doing. But when his needs weren't met, it was really hard for him.
Well, yeah, because you're in the thick of it. You're in the weeds. I mean, think of it think about it in terms of any relationship,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're in the thick of it and you're in the weeds of it, it's so hard to see the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
Once those needs are met and once you're not in the thick of it as much,
Then we're able to see
now
how great each other.
the clearing has, right? The cloud, the fog has now cleared a little bit.
Yes.
And we're able to see each other a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly what
Sometimes,
happened.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
it took all of that. And a lot of it was like, I mean, it sounds really simple, but it was like, you know, there needed to be food in the house and
Yeah.
the laundry needed to be done.
Let me tell you something, girl.
Those two things.
Girl, let me tell you something. Some of our biggest arguments are what's for dinner.
Yep.
Like, what is for dinner? What do you mean what's
Yeah.
for dinner? Like, why
And
I
why
have to
is-
decide
right,
what's
why
for
is that
dinner?
on
Why
me?
is it on me?
Yeah.
Well, because I'm the one who does the drop off at schools. Well, I didn't ask
Yeah.
you. It's like
It becomes a tit for
becomes a
tat.
whole tit for tat. And so then you start to realize, okay, I know for us,
Yeah.
there aren't these defined roles in the house. Like you do this, I do
Right.
that, and that's it. It's like we do have this fluidity, right? Of
Yeah.
like what our responsibilities are,
Yeah.
but we know what each person is good at. And when you start slacking on what you're good at and
Right.
what you're not bringing to the table, that's when I get pissed. And that's when he gets pissed.
Yes.
You know?
But that's an adult conversation, which I like.
It never feels like
not
it.
at the moment, but just the perspective of the fact that you know what each other's are like good at.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think in equity conversations, like it's okay to say, like I actually like in our house, I cook,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm the woman,
It's just because you enjoy it. Same.
and I'm better at it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he sucks at it, and that's okay.
That is
You know?
okay.
It happens to be gender stereotyped.
that is
But he's
okay.
just, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
As long as it's not because I'm cooking because I'm the woman.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Issa washes clothes. He loves washing clothes.
Yeah.
Like he will wash clothes. He will put in a load. I mean, he has shrunk several sweaters and I've been very pissed, but he'll do it though. So
Right.
I'm good at that. I just don't ever think of it. I
Yep.
mean, literally the laundry could be piling up till the moon and I just be like, I just didn't think of it. My
Dude,
bad.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm all about, I'm so good at starting things washing dishes and the clothes, I hate putting it away.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, me too. The folding, I'm like, oh my God, okay. I just can't. I can't. But let's talk about that though, because this might be the perfect time to start bringing in, right? This whole idea that you enjoy a village. A village, a community is important to you. Even within the confines of your home. Is creating a village. And I remember at one point we had a conversation and there must have been 12 people living at your house. There must have been. So walk me through that. So I'm going to let you explain it because I think you'll explain it better than I will.
Yeah.
But tell me, Shilpa, at one point in life, maybe not right now, but at one point in life, who was living at your house?
Probably at the peak, I had an entire family that was not ours, who was in the middle of transitioning, moving. So this was, I think the worst was probably in Oakland. I had an au pair, a nanny, another whole family and their dog, which were 2 kids, a couple, the dog, our 3 kids, a dog, my husband, and my nanny's husband at the same time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, it's a lot of people.
Wow. Okay, so this is my question.
Yeah.
How do we get there?
How do we get there?
Yeah. How does that happen? And then also, what is it about having that sort of village and community that you really enjoy? Because it's not something that just happens, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a part of you that you really kind of are welcoming.
I celebrate.
You celebrate it, and you say it with like such pride and energy, whereas I probably would be crying saying that. So tell me,
it is a pride.
Where does that
for
come
me.
from?
And like, and Lizzie, like honestly, if you were like, I need a place to stay, I'd be like, come live with me.
Great.
Like tomorrow.
I'm so happy I have that. I'm so happy I have that
You
outlet.
have that.
I
You
do.
can live with me anytime. Everyone's welcome. I actually have extra beds just for that.
Really?
Yes, I have so many beds.
You're
at my house.
prepared.
I have like 2 Murphy beds. Yeah, I'm always prepared.
I love this. Where does that come from?
I think it comes from growing up Indian and just seeing how, like our house is always open. Like it just, like that's like my husband's family had full family stay. Like they were transitioning from India probably at the time. We had the same thing. There's always like the sense, even like when you have a dinner party, that all the women stay to clean up. Like the house is always left clean before they leave because they know that you're going to do that like after they leave. And so it's just there's always the sentiment that many hands are better than just one set of hands. And so I view it that way. Like, yes, are people in your space?
Yeah.
100%. And that can get annoying and I can be passive aggressive too. I'm not a saint, but, but then like, there's like more people for pickup and we're doing the same things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, we're feeding our children. We're cleaning up after ourselves. We're picking up and dropping off. I mean, we're just glorified Uber drivers.
Yeah, right. I mean, at this point we are.
Yeah, and if there's like more people to do that, doesn't it make everything else easier?
Well, I think it's like this idea, and I just wrote an article on this not too long ago about the village, right? And how I grew up, it was always aunties that we weren't related to. It was like my mom's like girlfriends who would come over, and it was like they were always around, and we called them auntie,
auntie and uncle.
We weren't related to them, so I didn't understand like how that happened. But I was cool with it because it just felt like this ingrained community that she had created for us, and everyone felt like family. Yes, right. And so that's kind of how I see it.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
And as a result, you get so much closer to people. Like if you lived with me, we would have, like, there's an amazing thing that happens. Like you're making dinner together, you have dinner together, you hang out and you have conversations like in the morning over coffee. But then the other amazing thing is like when you're done, you just go to bed. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not sitting at that awkward moment in dinner where you're like, oh, I haven't seen this person. I feel like I have to be here for another hour and then I got to go home and do all these things. Right. Like you just go to bed because there's like a comfort and ease there.
But everybody can't live with you, Shilpa.
Everybody
can't live with you.
We can have sleepovers.
Do you feel like we can definitely do that? That's fun. I love an adult sleepover.
It's just you get to a different, Lizzie, I'm always just chasing depth.
Yeah.
I think that's who I am as a human. I don't want to, like, I love you. I want to know what's happening in your life. Like, There's like,
Not
what
the
are
surface,
I don't want the
right.
surface.
Yeah.
I don't want it in my business. I don't want it with my kids. I don't want it with my friends. Like,
Chasing depth.
I'm chasing depth.
Well, you're also, it's interesting to me too with this dynamic at home,
Yeah.
because you're also providing how you were raised and how your husband was raised for your kids.
Yeah.
Now it's the same mentality that you're giving them, right?
Right.
Of this, hey, we are a community.
Yep.
This is your village.
Yeah.
Create it. Create it.
It's exactly right. And at the time where I, was starting Cuyana and had young kids and, like I couldn't do the field trips. I couldn't do pickup, right? I needed that village of women and families and husbands around me and my kids, right? And so, I would just give them a lot of Cuyana bags, right? And the return, but like I didn't have that Big Little Lies experience. I had moms who were like, I see what you're doing and I'm available right now. I can go pick up your children.
Right.
Right. And so like, it just like, I couldn't have done it in any other way. So like whenever people look at what I've accomplished with Cuyana and how were you able to do it all, I think the myth of doing it all exists. Like you can't do it all.
Yeah.
There's always someone who supports you. And that's where I get, I just wish, like even with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, I'm all about that. Go chase fulfillment, chase that 10-year dream.
Right.
Right. But talk about all the people who supported you in that dream.
Man, I'm telling you, because
Right?
you can't do it alone.
You can't do it alone. Like, tell me, like Sheryl Sandberg she would have just, I think I admire her, but just tell me about the 3 nannies that supported you.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
I used to take my nanny to Cuyana and be like, this is the reason I didn't quit. Right? It's because of her.
Right.
Right?
That's
Because
right.
I always knew that the kids were
Taken
like,
care of.
yeah.
In good hands.
Right? Otherwise I couldn't have done it.
What do you, that's so interesting, right? Do you feel like people don't talk about that enough?
I don't think they do.
Like people who, especially
systems.
women who are, listen, we all know
Yeah.
no one's talking to a man about it.
Right.
That's
Right.
facts.
True.
No one's talking to a dad, father, whatever,
No one's asking about that. Yeah.
asking about, hey, what's your support system at home to
Right.
allow you to be in this
Yeah,
powerful position
exactly. And still have a good relationship
and still
with
have
your
a
kids.
great relationship with your kids and your family and your spouse and all these things.
Yep.
No one's talking to them about that.
They're not.
So now that we're talking to women about it,
Yeah.
do you feel like women don't speak about it enough? Because I think even for me, right? I had no idea that everyone had nannies before I moved
Right.
to LA.
Yep.
I was from Detroit. It was
Yeah.
something that it just wasn't like, it wasn't our norm.
Right.
Like moms, like they just did it all.
Yeah.
They just worked. They had grandmas.
Yes.
I had my grandma.
And you had aunties.
I had aunties. I had my grandma.
Right.
We had community. You're
Yeah.
right. It was a neighbor who
Right.
would make
It
sure
was
that we
everyone
got in the
else.
house safely.
Yeah.
It was like everyone else. But we didn't have like nannies. In LA was the first time where I was like, oh my God, everyone.
Has a nanny
Not everyone.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that because
lot of
I'm
people.
very aware.
in your where you were. They
I'm
had
very
nannies, right?
aware of also there is hierarchies and different levels in LA
Yes, for sure.
that that people don't also talk about enough, right?
Well, I was born and raised in LA,
So
but
there you go.
closer to like where our mutual friend Jessica Alba lived,
Yeah.
right? Like Pomona,
Yeah.
Walnut,
Where
and
she
like,
was-
and
where she
that's
was
like
raised, yeah.
the east part is the immigrant LA. We didn't have nannies. We had the same thing you did. We had
Yeah.
aunties,
Right.
right? We had community. We had
But
village.
now, literally, I mean, I want to say a good 90% of the women I talk to who are in these powerful positions
Yeah.
like yourself, they all have help. And is that not talked about enough? Is that giving this impression that women do have to figure it out, mothers do have to figure it out on their own in
Yes.
order to
Yeah.
make it work?
I absolutely think so. I mean, I had, when Carla and I started Guyana, female founders weren't glamorized.
No.
Nobody was talking about that. Nobody put us on stage in 2011, 2013, 2014.
Yeah.
And it became, and then all of a sudden there was like this girl boss era and like all these people were being put on stage and, and they were, and I actually had an issue with that in a different way because not that I didn't want credit. I wanted to be talking about what we were doing and we should champion these women, but we were over glamorizing the journey as
Yeah.
if they didn't sacrifice or compromise. And not everyone should be a founder. Like, cause you're going to give up a lot of really important things,
Yeah.
right? Like that I'm not sure if I made the right decisions. Like I was in it at the time, I committed.
Right.
And I was going to go see what I could make here because I don't walk away from commitments, right? But that doesn't mean that there weren't moments where I'm like, you know, like I wasn't with my children.
Yeah.
You know, there were whole swatches of time. You know, my oldest, I mean, he's part of it just him giving me slack now because he's 15, but you know, he's like, he jokes now. He's like, Mama, do you remember my childhood? And I'm like,
no.
He does it as
As a joke.
Yeah. And
but
then
for you, you're like, that's kind of funny and it hurts.
right? And that's why he does it. He's like, yeah, I remember like sitting at the window seat and looking at the window, seeing when Mom would come home. And I'm like, and that's real.
You know, because that's interesting though, because a lot of people start their own businesses thinking they'll have more time.
I did.
Thinking that they'll have more time. Oh, well, I can control my hours.
I thought
I'll have more time. I'll be able to do this. And the grind is so intense.
and most people are not successful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Most people don't get to be on stage. So you're telling another young woman, like, that was my issue. I'm sitting there looking at these young women saying, like, you should go do this and live your passions. And I'm like, I don't think that might be true for everyone. And am I setting them up for failure? Like, maybe they should be working for someone else. And like, that's what's their value system.
Then
at
how
home.
do you, okay, so this is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
How do you lead in the right way in that sense, right? Like how, if someone's coming to you for advice and they're like, hey, I'm so passionate about this. I really think yada, yada, yada. How do you decipher? Like, how do you decipher?
I ask him about the whole picture.
Yeah.
And like, what else gives them fulfillment? Is there not another way to do this? If they're picturing, like, I make them imagine that day where they've worked 18 hours. The business is not successful. They're going to run out of money. They haven't seen their kids. Their husband is upset at them. Right? Like, and do you still want to keep going?
Yeah.
And you're never going to get on stage.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to do it because they feel like that's what's going to happen.
Right.
That somehow they're going to be celebrated for it. Because
Right.
I didn't do it for that. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
Right? And it could have been very well that we never made it.
So you went into it with a blind faith.
I went into it thinking what you said. I thought I could pick up my children.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I would have, so I was already grinding from age 30, right? Like I took on an MBA, I took on so many things. I thought now I was 34, I had 2 kids. Like I was like, oh, I can actually like relax a little and do something. And none of the other jobs were interesting to me. I'd worked my way out of those. I worked 10 years before I got my degree.
Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals make eating better every day easy. Wherever tomorrow takes you, be ready with pre-prepared, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. You'll have over 35 different options a week to choose from, including keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more. There's even more to enjoy with over 55 nutrition-packed add-ons that help make your weekly meal planning even more delicious. So what are you waiting for? Get started today and have a feel-good week of meals ready to go. Head to factormeals.com/coolmomcode50. That's factormeals.com/coolmomcode50 and use code coolmomcode50 to get 50% off. That's code coolmomcode50 at factormeals.com/coolmomcode50 to get 50% off. Factor's delicious ready-to-eat meals make eating better every day easy. Just also a really quick note, if you're loving this content, our podcast with all of our amazing guests, we love sharing their stories. It really is such a joy for us, then you're gonna love thecoolmom.co. Make sure to head over there. It is everything that you can think of lifestyle. So we have fashion, food, we have amazing interviews with a lot of other cool moms as well. So check out all of our Cool Mom Co features, shop our merch, do all the things. Check out thecoolmom.co. Why did you think Cuyana was it?
I couldn't get it out of my head. Like when Carla would talk to me about it, like I would think about it in the shower. I'm like, she's right. Like we don't have pieces I want to wear every day. Like I've spent all this money. Like my closet has nothing to show for it. I still don't know what to wear.
Wow.
Like what is happening? Like how come no one shops like my grandmother? Like the material here sucks.
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of my head what she was doing. I'm like, she's onto something. I want to do this. And I'm like, this is her. And she was so gracious and willing I mean, come on. Who accepts a woman who has 2 children under, right? Like, who's excited to work with you? Nobody, right? I had a semester of school. I'm like, she's crazy, right? Now in retrospect, like, you know, and she had to do a lot of work on me. She compromised a lot, you know, like I'll never forget her face when I was like, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to go on a road trip. And she was just like, we're trying to launch a website.
Business. Yeah, exactly.
She's like, I understand when it comes to your children, but I'm not trying to like wait on my whole life with my crazy credit card bills.
Yes,
so you can go like on a road trip.
That's right. You know? That's right.
But
so
like
much sacrifice.
That's a lot of sacrifice. But you know, I made the commitment and I couldn't get it out of my head, and I knew this was the time to lean all in. This wasn't going to happen for me again. This was the one opportunity. And then as I got real and I understood what I had taken on, then it was like, okay, let's see what happens in a year. But I'm not going to compromise.
How do you push through those moments, though? How do you push through? Because we all know the war stories, basically, of it is to even raise money for a company, to do all those sort of things, to even get it off of the ground. You accomplish that, even as a woman of color. Yeah. Let's put all the barriers on you. Right. Because you have it all stacked against you, right? So all of those things. And a mom, right? All those things stacked against you, you did it. You and Carla made it happen. You did it. As horrible as it probably the process was. Now you're in it and you're like, okay, I thought I was going to be able to get off at 5. Yeah. I thought I was going to be able to make this play. I thought I was going to be able to go to soccer practice, all these things, and you can't. How do you push through those moments and keep going and saying, okay, still the business. I'm still here. I'm still 100% committed, even though you are sacrificing so much on the family side?
I think this is the picture I paint for those founders or the women who want to do this life. And I paint that very picture because those were the moments where I'm not quite sure how I did. Because it killed me. Yeah. It killed me inside when you're like, and it's not just like you're not off at 5. It's 10 p.m. and you have 4 hours of work to do. Yeah. Right. And you still have to get up at 6 with that child. Right. Like, and you're going to do that in perpetuity. Yeah. Right. I did
without
that
an ending.
Right. For years. Yeah. Like for the first 3 years after I finished business school, I would wake up at 6 with my kids. I would get them to school. I would rush to work. There was no hybrid or working, online. I would get to the office. I would work all day. I would run home to let my nanny off, right? Put the kids to bed. I wouldn't feed them. I'd put them to bed. And then I would stare at the wall. Because I couldn't, like, for half an hour, just, like, stare at the wall. Because I was just like, okay, like, to motivate myself to get back online. Yeah. I'd get back online at 9. I would work till midnight or 1 until our Ukrainian development team would come online. I would tell them the stuff they had to get done that night. I would fall asleep on the couch. I would wake up at 3, check in with them to see if they had any questions. And then I would go to bed and then wake up at 6 again. On repeat for years.
Wow. Like, how do you sustain that, though? How do you sustain that from a health perspective?
I was not healthy. I mean, but like, that's the thing. Like, if you make the commitment, all I did was like, what I would motivate myself was like, you could do anything for a year. If in a year, when I reevaluate this decision and if I have more to do, I will keep going. Yeah. And every year I would just recommit. Yeah. Like, I literally would move the flagpole. And every year I'd be like, okay, now can I do another year? Now can I do another year? And I would come back to it and I was like, there's more to do here. I don't want to give it up.
There's something about what you're saying with this whole, like, the long game.
That's why I'm saying it's a decade.
It's the long game. It's the reevaluating over a year. You know, a lot of people, the short game is hard. You know,
it's impossible.
It's the short game where you're like in a couple months. And a lot of people say, oh, in a month. Yeah. If I still feel like this in a month, you're saying reevaluate at a year. Do the 10-year goal, right? It's these long chunks of time where you're giving yourself to really truly make these decisions.
10 years, when I look at my life, I hit all the goals.
Yeah.
I was still married happily.
Yes.
You know, my kids were happy and healthy and well-rounded people that were empathetic and kind, right? And were passionate.
Right.
I had a business that was thriving.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't do that on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month.
Yeah. You didn't
I
work,
had
yeah.
to put it down for 3 years before I could then, we had a team that I could, you know, someone else got up with Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
You know, like it was a different,
It's
like,
a different
and I got to
yeah.
sleep through the night, different kind of stress.
Exactly.
But like, those are like, you work to those things. So that's why I say, I think it's I think it's something that holds women back.
Yeah.
Because if we're told every day that you're supposed to accomplish all of these things and that you're failing if you don't, then we're not going to accomplish anything.
No, you're right. I mean, I think that's where people get misguided.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's where people get misguided
And
in thinking that that is possible and thinking that this equal balance of everything
Yep.
is possible.
Right.
And I also think that is sometimes the flashy jewel
Yep.
that people think when starting a business. They think, okay, well, I'll be able to do this, this, and that.
Right.
And when that shatters, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, and
what
why
in
am I doing it?
What in the hell am I doing?
Right. And so if your motivation is that flashy jewel, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Just like, and I'm sure you love this, like, you know, like it's the bride who thinks her marriage is the happiest day of her life, her
exactly.
wedding.
Yeah.
And you're like, girl, if you're not happy the day after the wedding,
That's right.
you have a long,
That's-
like, wedding, marriage is
exactly.
long.
That's exactly. Just sign up now. Sign up for the therapy now. You
She's
just
like,
do
yeah,
it.
because that's
Exactly.
like,
That's
there's
not
a
the right
whole
one.
marriage to live
There's
now.
a whole 50, 60, 70
Right.
years to go.
So like, yes, sometimes they get on stage, but like all of the stuff that's behind that,
Yeah, it's a whole different.
it's a whole different
beast.
thing. And so that has to motivate you.
Right.
Because the rest of it is just like, yeah, there's just a little bit of glory, but
There's a little bit of glory, but it's not a lot. You're right. It has to be something else. There has to be something else with something. It's just, you know what it is? I think what also comes down to is, as a parent, you're constantly looking for ways to be more in control of your time.
Right.
Time becomes so important when you have kids because it's
Yeah.
not just about you anymore, and there are important things that happen.
for that, but that's also just a decade,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because when you're in it, and I'm in it again, right? At 15, 12, and 3, I
Yeah.
went back
You
for
did
round
go back.
2. Just crazy. And so like, and I'm in it and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, this is going to last forever, even though I know it doesn't last forever. I've already
Let's
gone
talk
through it.
let's talk about that though really quick, because
Yeah.
you went backwards. You went back to the 3
I reset.
when having your kids back to back or in a good time, like in a good
Yeah. I was
age
at the point,
range
Lizzy,
was
where I could
important.
leave them at home alone.
Yeah. So how did that happen? Where did the little one come from?
Total accident. It's a complete accident. And, you know, it was really hard.
Yeah.
It was a very tough choice for me. You know, and I mean, we can get into like a lot of this stuff, but we lost my sister-in-law
Yeah.
6 months before I got accidentally pregnant. So at the beginning of 2019, and I didn't really feel like I had a choice.
Yeah.
Like from a universe perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, and that was hard. Like I went through prepartum, postpartum. I made the decision, but that didn't mean like going through with the decision wasn't challenging.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I talk about, just kind of bring it full circle to your question earlier. I think it's a disservice if we don't give the full picture to people. And
Yeah.
so the way I combat that, and alongside my chasing depth, is by getting real. I get
Yeah.
really real, and maybe too real sometimes, but I want people to know, like, here's everything I just went through, and I'm still here. And so other people, like, you know, who are going through a lot, like, you know, you just, like, you have to just show up, and there are other people who can relate to that.
Right.
And so having this third child, and, you know, on Instagram, you post that photo and he's all cute and he's amazing, but it's a whole world of stuff that goes into raising a child and starting over, and, you know, and not fully knowing that that's what I wanted for my life at this stage. Right.
Right. I mean, listen, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that the surprise is, whoa.
Yeah.
And we laugh about it. But at the same time, there's a whole world that comes around that. The beauty in it,
Yeah.
Shilpa, is that because of your 10-year plans,
Yes.
You have created a community and a village to
Yes.
help support you.
Correct.
This past year, though,
Yeah.
you found out something about your youngest,
Yeah.
and you've really needed the support, right,
Yeah.
through this journey. Can you talk about it a little
Yeah. And I'm, like I feel like I haven't talked about it like kind of more in a social way before, on the record kind of way. And I do feel like the universe sends you signs, and I love that I'm doing it here. I'm not like, Beyonce, where I'm debuting or telling Taylor Swift, like, I have a new album dropping. No.
But you know what? You're sharing something that is very personal.
Yeah. And so it is an honor to share it here with you in this way, into this community. I found out, I always knew there was something extra with my third, and I had signs even in his first year, second year of life. And I kept asking people and researching online, which, married to a doctor, I shouldn't do. I should ask the experts. And then last year in January is when I first heard the word autism. In application to, in context of my little one. And February, I got confirmation from the pediatrician, and then I did 6 months of just straight evaluations. I did 6 evaluations over 6 months. And so, I found out that Arav is on the spectrum. He is impaired in interesting ways.
When you say you saw signs in the beginning, what were those signs?
Things are just harder in different ways. I couldn't run the vacuum, the blender. He was very difficult to put to bed. I was really good at sleep training my older children, and, it took until 9 months. Just transitions were difficult. He would lie on his side and like kind of view the world sideways. And now I know it's because the world is overwhelming, and so they can take in less and control what they see. Flipping the eyelids, pulling the hair, just a lot of like little things, and which in isolation, they could be explained away developmentally. Oh, they throw tantrums a lot.
Right.
2-year-olds throw tantrums.
Right.
He was a little slower to language, but he did get there at 14 months. So like all of this stuff wasn't like, he started to say some words, but wasn't to the point anywhere near where I thought he would be at age 2.
Right.
So there was just all these little things.
Right.
And so I asked, my friend, who's a doctor in New York, and, I was looking up stuff like sensory processing disorder and like other things.
Yeah.
I'm like, just something's extra here. And she was like, have you looked at autism? And I felt like I literally felt the ground go away underneath my feet. And I am a capable person, and I'm a capable woman. And I've been spiraling. Like the whole last year, I spiraled hard. If you don't know if your child, like through all those years with Cuyana, I knew my kids were going to be okay.
That's right.
I knew they would be fine. Like I knew okay, yes, I used to bank on the fact that they might not remember most of it, right? 2 to 5, they don't remember much, right? Like
You're right.
if mom was gone or not, as long as they were held, like they were good. But with his diagnosis, I didn't know if he was going to be okay. And that's the difference. Like I couldn't control it.
Right.
And so I went on a journey, and I couldn't, and it's bad if I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I share everything, and I couldn't talk about it with people.
Yeah.
Not like, I'm able to talk about it now
Yeah.
that I feel like I'm on solid ground again. But
Right.
It was really, really hard. It is really hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And there's a lot of hands-on that you're now doing in order to make sure that he's thriving.
Yes. And you're right with that village, because I started to just look at other people, or look at who, was, sharing with a few people here and there, and they would connect me to someone else. And it was actually, do you remember that Ilya event that we went to last year? And I, met this woman who had really good energy, and she tagged me in a photo, and I went to her profile, and it said autism advocate.
Wow.
And because she shared, I DM'd her. And then that same day, Lizzy, I was connected to one of the most epic programs that's going to change the trajectory of our family's life at
Wow.
UCLA.
Wow.
And it was through sharing and through connecting and not, I don't have a stigma.
Yeah.
I just couldn't talk about it because I didn't know how I felt or
Well,
what. Yeah.
I mean, you're still
I
figuring
couldn't find the
out.
words.
Yeah. And you're still figuring out what all of it means to you and your family. You're still figuring out what the process is. You're still figuring out
Yeah.
the next moves to make. You're still figuring all that out. And you're still figuring it out what's the best for him.
Yeah.
And sometimes sharing it, like you said,
Yeah.
private DMing somebody is a good thing because you can find those resources. Sometimes saying it to a group of people is great because you're creating community.
Yep.
And sometimes just holding on it is okay too.
Yeah. And
you
you're
know?
not obligated.
No, and you're not. And I think that's an interesting point to make too. Just because something's happening in your life doesn't mean you're required to share it.
Even if you're a sharer.
Just because you're a sharer and just because you're a public figure.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're required to share it. You're allowed to hold cards to your heart
Yep.
and share them when and if you decide to.
Even though the expectation for some reason with females is that we're supposed to.
Even though the expectations of people who put themselves in the public.
Yeah.
So we expect to know all these things about you.
Yep.
But once again, it's not our right to know all these things about you.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that through this process, you're kind of creating a whole new community.
Yeah. Yes. This is my 40s,
Yeah.
right? And this is my new journey. And whether it was by choice this time, it wasn't. None of it, even, him being here, I don't feel like was fully my choice. Like it was a surprise.
Right.
So it was my choice, but a surprise. And I'm honored to have choices. I just, I'm here and I'm taking it in, and I'm forever changed. I really feel that. Like I just see the world differently, and I'm expanded in a new way, and it is a gift. I can recognize that now.
Right.
I also, though, like in the same vein, I also know I'm in a privileged position with where he's at.
Right.
And not everybody's at that same place.
Exactly.
Like I also know now he's going to be okay in a different way.
Right.
And not everyone who's on this journey that I'm on has that knowledge.
This is my last question for you. What do the next 10 years
look like
for you?
It's a great question. And the honest answer, Lizzie, is I don't know. And I think
For the first time.
For the first time.
For the first time. And you know what? That's okay.
That's okay. I'm going to start to figure it out, and I don't have to fully know. I do know I need to put down some markers.
Yeah.
Because I never want to live with regret.
That's right.
I know one of them for sure is I'm a parent of an autistic child. And what that means and how I share and how I connect with others and what impact I make there. I don't know yet, but I know there's something that needs to happen there. I have to use the platform I have in some way to make impact. And and I'm not talking about the public platform, just my capacity as a human.
Well, listen,
Yeah.
I know you.
Yeah.
I know you well. And I will say this, you don't live in regret.
Yeah.
And you will not regret the next 10 years either. I'm very excited to see what the next 10 years holds for you because, listen, Shilpa Shah is coming. I'm telling you, she's coming. Thank you, Shilpa.
Thank you.